Just in time for the anniversary of Marilyn Monroe's birthday, author Mima Tipper has released a new book, Channeling Marilyn. In this episode, Curtis and I talk all about the inspiration of this book, Mima's second, so far. She shares her interest in the legendary Marilyn Monroe and what she learned about her during the writing process. Mima also talks about the business of writing, offering her advice for taking feedback and the value of having someone to critique your work. She goes into the challenges of making writing into a business and the importance of really knowing the genre. Citywide Blackout starts right now.
Welcome to Citywide Blackout, the place where writers, musicians, and creators from cities all over the world come to hang out, dive into their works, peel back the curtain on their creative process, and provide knowledgeable, actionable insight that you can apply to your own creative masterpieces. With decades of journalism, media, and entertainment industry experience, your hosts Max Bowen and Curtis Hughes provide fun, informative, and sometimes outrageously bizarre interviews that will keep you enlightened and entertained with a few F-bombs thrown in for emphasis. So put up your feet, grab a beverage, and let's go.
Well, Mima, first off, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really just like reading about your book. I thought, okay, this is very, very interesting. Of course, your new book, Channeling Marilyn. This is a pretty cool concept. And I would like to just ask, first off, just what kind of prompted this idea that made you think, yes, that this will be my next book?
I mean, the reason it's my next book has a lot to do with the fact that this is June 2026 is Marilyn's 100th birthday. So I've been working on this book for a really long time. And when it occurred to me that it connected that the year was her 100th birthday, it was like, all right, this is time to get this book out there, to finish what I'm going to do with it and get it out there. So that's why it's my next book. But also, I just love this story. I mean, it came to me a long time ago. Basically, my daughter, we were sitting at the kitchen counter. Somehow we had a paper copy of Teen Vogue. So this is my daughter's in middle school. And I don't know how we got this magazine, but somehow we had a copy of Teen Vogue. And my daughter was always from birth a fashionista. She loved fashion. So I thought, we'll sit here, we'll look at this magazine together. And we were going through it. And I just, all of a sudden, there was a model like for a perfume ad or clothing brand that was just all done up like Marilyn pinup style. And I was just like, wow, like really, people? I mean, this is Teen Vogue. I mean, what? Like, can't we leave this woman alone? She's been dead for like 50 years. I mean, let's just leave her alone. And then, we kept going in the magazine and bang, there was like another actress or young actress that was also done up like Marilyn Monroe. And it just really kind of stuck in my mind that she's still so permeating our culture. And of course, after that experience, Marilyn was everywhere for me. There were clothing brands and perfume and, people doing kind of vintage things about her and art retrospectives and film showings. And she was just like everywhere, all the T-shirts. I would go somewhere and she'd be on the wall of a restaurant or a cafe or whatever. She was everywhere. So it just started coming into my mind, like, what would she think of this? Like, if she was up there on her personal cloud in the afterlife, like looking down, going, like, what would she think of the fact that there's still so many people who are still fascinated with her? And the more I got into it and started checking out fan sites, I just realized she still has a huge, huge fan base, and people are still absolutely inspired by her and intrigued by her. And so I started, I kind of went from thinking, what if she was up there looking down, to what if her spirit could come back, and who would she visit and why and what would happen? And little by little, the story kind of came together, and I was really fascinated with trying to create my version of not Marilyn, because I read a lot of biographies and interviews and watched her movies over and over again. And it's like, I didn't want to write about her life as it was, the way she was on this planet. I wanted to create, like, who would her spirit be if she was in the afterlife for 50 or 60 years watching all of this unfold? Like, what would that being think of what was going on this? And if she could come back, why would she come back, and who would she come back for? So a little nuance there, not, a little nuance in terms of creating the character.
I like that. I mean, like, really, I guess, like, the legends just, like, never die, you know? Like,
Yeah.
even all these years later, yeah, you're right. She's still such a part of just pop culture and our society as a whole. But let us now pivot to your main character in this book, Lexa Donovan. Not really living, like, the best life. She's definitely struggling a little bit. And she gets the chance to be in her school's production of Bus Stop, which she thinks, this is it. This is my thing. Oh my God, I can't do this anymore. And then one day, Marilyn Monroe is in her head.
Yeah.
I love this idea. I love this concept. But before we get into that, tell us about what into just creating the character of Lexa and what is she dealing with?
So Lexa, she's dealing with, basically having felt like she's like the frame to everybody else's story. She's got her best friend M, who's like very, very powerful, independent, fashion-oriented character, and they're best friends, and it's great. But Lexa's sort of more on the background and has kept herself in the background after some, middle school kind of bullying, especially, and as she developed. And it's like, I call her tall and plus size because my daughter, went to school with a lot of girls like this who were they were just big girls, they were just big, and tall and weren't like little pixies. And a lot of the fashions were not really geared toward their figures. I mean, there were, so they really just, it was a kind of a self-image thing. So I was looking to create a character the character that Marilyn would come back for would first of all be someone who was full of yearning, as I found Marilyn in life to be. Everything I read about her and just her demeanor in life was that she wanted so much and she yearned to be a star. She yearned for the love and attention and to be a really good actress. And I felt like Lexa was going to be a character who was at that point in her life, graduating from high school and like just full of yearning too, but not even knowing exactly what exactly she's yearning for. She just wants more and wants to make some changes. And so, there's going to be a lot of self-image issues, and there were going to be transformation, desire for some kind of a little bit of transformation, because certainly Marilyn experienced that, as well as a lot of high school kids. They want to make a change and be their best self, be different, and if they could just go somewhere else where people didn't know them and didn't remember them growing up, they could be different. And I just feel like Lexa's in that place where she wants something. She's not sure exactly what it is, but something different. And so when the play comes around, it's like, this is different. That's why she kind of gets into it, is that she's like, I just need to make a change. But then it's like she's sort of tapped with the like too much of a change. Like, this is more than I wanted. I didn't want to be like this kind of character. I wanted to be part of this, but I didn't want to be like this and really putting myself out there like this. And I'm not sure I can do it. And of course, there's a little romance going on. So she's got those types of things, and just people's attitudes and, expectations of herself, and not wanting to disappoint her dad, who has had some disappointments. And, I just wanted to I felt like that was the kind of character that would capture a spirit, just all those feelings. So anyway.
Yeah, I really love this concept. So I kind of want to start with like the chicken or the egg concept question on here. Was it Marilyn Monroe the idea first for the story, or was it Lexa as a character?
I think first it was really Marilyn's spirit. Like, who would that be? What would that be? And then it was like, all right, if she's going to come back, why? Why would she come back? Who would she come back for? Like, who would be a powerful enough person, presence, that Marilyn's spirit would be forced to stop and like latch on to this person. Like, this person is thinking about me. She's thinking of me as a person, because Lex is very fixated on Marilyn's performance in Bus Stop, the movie. And she's just like, why is this young girl fixated on that and me? And like, there's this connection, and then she wants to know what's going to happen and what this person is going to do. And then she finds herself really actually attached to Lexa and feels like she's got a purpose. There's a purpose here for her. So that was really the first. So that was, it was really Marilyn's spirit first. And then Lexa kind of grew from who would be powerful enough a powerful enough need to capture this spirit's attention.
Did Lexa go through like many iterations in your process before you finally was like, yes, this is the character that has to latch on?
I sort of had a basic idea of the story. That's kind of how stories kind of come to me, sort of in a big picture. I can sort of see like this happens and this happens. But as I got to know her better, I understood more about like what she was actually worried about and what she actually, how strong the yearning was for like what she was really yearning for. And also just their relationship. I feel like she changed in her relationship with the spirit. I mean, just over time and over drafts, the story became a lot more about friendship as opposed to just, mentoring or, being the fairy godmother. And I just felt it was important. Lexa's character could only be as strong as Marilyn's character because they're bound together. And I wanted them to both have, a lot of agency in this story. It wasn't just like Marilyn kind of as a prop to prop Lexa up. I think that's really important. I actually wrote an article about, it's going to come out. It's called 5 Tips for Writing About Dead Celebrities. And one of the bits is, if you're going to write about a dead celebrity, you need to bring it. Like that character has to have their own story arc, their own agency. You can't just be like dropping them in here and there. So that was really important to me. And the more I got to know Marilyn's spirit, it became more clear the way Lexa would respond to that relationship and who she would be also. So,
Sure.
Yeah, I had two very powerful writing mentors give me advice about if you're going to use something of this power, you better bring it. You better really be prepared to bring it. And I worked really hard to, I hope, do that just to like, one guy was like, she better be on it. You're going to write about Marilyn Monroe. She better be on every page of your book. You don't just drop her in at the beginning and at the end, So I was like, that advice was with me from day one, first draft, like first 50 pages. That advice was with me. It's like,
I got to imagine that, quite a bit of research went into Marilyn Monroe for this as well. Did you find out anything that was interesting or that was like, wow, shocking? I didn't realize that actually occurred.
Well, that's interesting because you read biographies and you read interviews. And, I think after a while, I just kind of began to somewhat question a lot of what I was reading because it's like, unless you're actually talking to this person, it's just somebody's opinion and somebody's story, somebody's version of what happened. And, I have 2 books that were written by Marilyn. One is a series of interviews that she did, and another was called Fragments, which was poetry that she wrote. So that was a surprise. I didn't realize that Marilyn actually wrote poetry. Some of it, incredibly personal and, fractured like on napkins and bits of paper that were collected for this book. That's why it's called Fragments, I believe. But, and, a lot of her story has been well documented, her tragic youth and how she came up in the modeling world. And I think I was just incredibly impressed with how hard she worked all the time. She was just really a hard worker. And that's how she came across to me, was that she just wanted to be, she was climbing this mountain and she was just bringing every bit of what she had to bear to climb the mountain. And I don't know if when she got to the top of that mountain, if the view was what she thought it was going to be. I kind of get the impression it wasn't. But I don't know that. That's not my story to tell, So I actually just got a copy of her last interview. It's a book that just came out called, Marilyn's it's called The Last Interview. And it was an interview she did. I can't remember with who. I just got the book. It's still like in a plastic wrapper. Clearly they don't want people just poking through this book, right? That she did only a couple of months before she died. So I'm really looking forward to diving into that and seeing kind of what she was really thinking, like in her very last bit of time on this planet.
I can't imagine being the person who got to do that, to like interview her right before she passed away, thinking like, this is it. This is like the last time she'll speak to anyone. It's unbelievable.
And not know it until afterwards.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
So I'll be looking forward to reading that and see kind of, what comes out of that. And it's just, anything I read that was really, I felt were her words, or if she was in an interview, like if it was a little bit of an interview that she was doing on a talk show or something back in the day, I put a lot more store by than just someone writing about my time with Marilyn or what I think of Marilyn. It's just like, that's just like, who knows? Who knows the reality?
Sure. Is there any one book that if someone said, hey, I'm looking for the perfect Marilyn Monroe biography, is there one book that you would say, that one?
Gosh, I really would say no.
Awesome. I like that.
I can't, probably because I read all these books, really a while ago, but I don't think so. I don't think I would say that. There's one book, and I don't have the title. I wish I had the title with me. It's in, I'm outside in this like little caravan that I have that my husband built for me. So all my books are inside. But I would say probably this last interview would be probably one that I would say, you probably want to check that out because that's going to be really interesting. My sister gave me a huge book that was created by the photographer Andre de Dienes, I think is his name. And he wrote a long journal of his time with Marilyn when he was photographing her. So it really covers the time like right before she became famous to into the years where she was really coming into her early starletdom. So that is also, super interesting to get that personal, and also because of the time period that it covers. But, just offhand, I think her poetry, the book Fragments, is probably the one that I was most interested in reading because it was just all her writing. So probably would recommend that one for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Now, let us talk about Marilyn and Lexa. It's definitely not like the ideal pairing here, but I'm curious as to how the two of them like just get along and work together, that they're kind of occupying the same space.
Well, I think it's like a real learning curve because neither one of them, I even say that's one of the lines in the book is that, being a spirit is not an exact science, so neither of them really knows what they're getting into. And, Lexa, when I don't want to give too much away here, but she's trying to do a favor just for a couple days, like, I'm going to get out of this. So let's and then, things happen where the time frame, there's a specific time frame and they sort of feel like they know when it will be over. But, I think that neither one of them really knows for sure how things are gonna work, and there's not like a level of control there that this is not a movie. Let's put it that way. It's like this is not a movie. They both kind of come to understand that this is not going to go the way they think it is, just because this has never happened to either one of them. One of them. So things are going to probably get messy, and they do.
I like that. Yeah, it's definitely good when the road can be a little bit tricky because you don't want it to be too easy. You don't want things to work out too well. In terms of like forming their overall, just their dialogue and their relationship, did you kind of go back and forth in doing this before you said, yeah, this is actually working well for me?
I definitely for Lexa, I spent a lot of time. I wrote quite a bit of the book during the time all my kids were in high school. I really worked on this book literally for probably been 15 years. Not constantly, but
yeah,
over time. I'm a slow learner and a slow writer. So for Lexa, I definitely listen to a lot of my kids and take a lot of their dialogue. And I'm not writing for young people. I'm not trying to be like super trendy with language and stuff. I think that my kids have pointed out it's like this really dates you when you pick up on certain things and focus on certain things. So there's a lot of paring back of language and simplification. And for Marilyn, I really just watching her in the movies, because her spirit, this is another nuance of the character, is that her spirit has come to Lexa and she wants to be what Lexa needs at this time to really help her. And what Lexa's knowledge of Marilyn is based on her performance and her fame. That's kind of the demeanor that the spirit sort of assumes because she thinks that that's how Lexa expects her to be.
Mhm.
So she feels like that will be easier for Lexa to deal with if she's comes across as more how Lexa expects her to be. So I tried to think of the movie, watch the movies and think about the Marilyn's different characters, many of whom are, they're versions of a similar character. Not all of them, but many of them are. And I sort of focused on that as trying to create the difference between the two. And, just language, like some of the language she would use would be sort of more from the 50s, a little more from the 50s, like saying dungarees instead of jeans. It's like, I remember that. It's like, just things like that are just a little dated. I wanted her language to be a little dated.
Yeah, I love that. I really do. How
Uh-huh.
about any themes or messages in the story? Is there sort of like a central theme to this you hope the kind of readers pick up?
I think, in terms of like the central theme, what I thought of was, I really wanted it to be that people, that what readers would take away would be like maybe more of a willingness to face their fears and take them along with them on their journey and just be more ready to engage with the world and get out there. But I think there were other themes that kind of came up. I mean, there's definitely the theme of like how self-image can affect your choices, how transformation can also, how high school and like high school theater can be a time for a young person to try out different personas and hopefully become more themselves by transforming into other characters, get to know themselves more deeply. There's definitely, themes of like how important female friendship is. And, and actually really surprisingly, at least to me, grief, this is kind of a grief narrative in many ways, because, certainly Lexa's mother is not around, but she didn't really know her. And, her best friend also, that's sort of how they ended up getting to know each other young. They both had suffered loss. But for me personally, this is actually really weird. Like I just had to write the dedication for this book not that long ago. And when I wrote the dedication, I was like, oh, so that's what this whole book is about. And that was really not very long ago. And I realized that about a year before I started writing this book, I lost my niece, Maggie. She was just graduated from college, so she died very young. And then very recently, a couple of years ago, I lost my nephew, Michael, pretty tragically. And I just realized that, part of like with Michael, I did some grief work. Like I took some workshops around processing grief. And one of the ways that people process grief is through writing, which of course as a writer, I'm like, okay, I can relate to that. And one thing as a prompt is that they say, oh, well, write a different story for your lost loved one. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so bizarre. Like for years, people would ask me, why are you writing about Marilyn Monroe? Like, really, why are you writing about Marilyn Monroe for years? Like what is your problem? It's like, and over time, I would say, I just kind of want to give her a different story. I just want to give her a different story. I just want to think about her in a different way. And I want to give her a different story. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's like, that's so subconsciously, I think a lot of this process of writing this book was really about processing grief for myself. I'm just like processing grief by writing this outlandish story about Marilyn Monroe's spirit. So anyway, that's clearly another theme, a very personal theme that I hope comes through, and I hope people can think about that, like how that feels to read something completely different about somebody, even if it's their spirit, not their actual person. So anyway.
Well, Mima, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry about your losses. It's
thanks.
Tragic.
Yeah.
And it sounds like though this book was kind of a help to you a little bit, at least in kind of working through what you were feeling.
I think so, because it just sort of allows you to, I absolutely value people's lives. I value Marilyn Monroe's actual life, and I honor her life. It's hers, it's her story, and what happened, and it's hers. So I don't want to take anything away from the reality of this person and what she went through and what she achieved, what she lost, and the loss of her. But I feel like I got to know her by looking at her through this different lens. I feel like I imagined different things about her and got to know her in a different way that to me personally was very valuable and helpful and very, very positive to think about giving this spirit. And I also kind of in the book, I won't say what happens, but it's like I kind of gave her a couple things that she didn't get to do in life, that I kind of felt through all my reading that she kind of might have liked to have been able to do. So I kind of gave her the ability to do a couple things. And that was very meaningful to me, to do that.
We've spent a lot of time talking about this really amazing story, but we're going to talk a little more about the business side of writing, because anyone who does this, if you do music, you make comics, you make movies, it is a business. It is a lot of work. So, Mima, I'd like to ask you about, just as a writer, do you have like a weekly schedule or a certain setup you like to use to kind of get your creative energies going?
I would say I'm an early morning person. I get up really early. I love the early morning, and I'm a kitchen timer writer. If I'm actively drafting, it's like I set the timer, and it's like I'm not going to move for this hour or 2 hours or whatever time I have. I don't like to be precious about I have a life, my family, like they always came first. So I was always fitting in my writing around, being a very active parent with my 3 kids. And that worked for me, to just continue to push, to continue to make progress on stories. I don't have I'm not like a writer's block. That doesn't really work for me, writer's block. It's like, just work on the next thing. Just put that, if this scene isn't working, work on the next one. It's like, I just like to make progress, even if it's like really crappy writing, I'll just continue until I get a draft. And it's just like one day at a time, one page at a time. Sometimes I'll do word count, like I want to get this number of words done, and I will try to do that. But when I'm actively drafting, it's like early morning, couple hours, right into the middle of a scene, and then pick it up the next day and keep going until it's done. And I do a lot of writing while I'm thinking, while I'm like doing other things, like thinking about what I'm going to write and what I'm going to do. But with the last book that came out and this one, I have to say that my actual creative writing has really been put on hold because I'm so busy trying to promote. I'm dealing with all the stuff I put into place for my last book and then also promote this book. So most of the writing I'm doing is a lot of like writing articles and blog pieces and written interviews and things like that. So I am looking forward to getting back to my next novel. But yeah, being an author is really different than being a writer. I mean, those are like, I don't know if other authors have said that to you. It's like being a writer is like kind of like being in a room by yourself and hopefully the door is closed mostly. Being an author is like the door is open and you're just like out there talking to people. And that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm really heavily in author mode right now. So it's a lot of fun. I like talking to people. So
cool.
It's good for me.
Yeah. What do you think are some of the major challenges to making writing into a career for you as opposed to something you kind of do like on the side?
Well, I think it depends on the kind of writing you do, but writing it's really hard work. It's very time consuming. To my view, it takes a long time to write something really that you can expect other people to spend money to buy and read. So writing is like great. Everyone can be a writer. Just go ahead and write. But if you want other people to read your work and you want them to spend money on it, that's like a whole different can of worms there. I feel like it takes time to create something that's polished enough and good enough and deep enough and thought out enough, baked enough to really be able to be sold. And so, there's lots of ways people make a career. I mean, people who write a lot of articles, who write short stories, who really target their writing to specific markets and are willing to do that. They're willing to do that kind of writing. Writing novels, it just takes a long time and unless you pre-sell it somehow. And that's getting harder and harder to do because so many publishing houses, are just looking for like something that's going to be the winner. And, they might pay you money, but I feel like it's really hard to break into that and actually make a living like as a novelist. So, like Virginia Woolf said, to be a writer, you need money. She said this first, you need money and you need a room of your own. So I think that a lot of people like save up and like invest in their, it's important to be able to invest in your career. Like hopefully if you have or another job that pays you money so you can actually do the writing too. But, school visits, people charge you can do school visits, you can do talks. You can teach writing. I mean, there's lots of ways to make a living, to piece it together to make a living. But just simply making a living from writing, I think that to my view, a writer has to really find a genre that actually makes money and that they can tap into that market. Like writing children's books or for young people, very hard to make a lot of money unless somehow you're, I don't know who you have to be. Even some of the really famous Rick Riordan, okay, but he's got like a publishing imprint, and he was a teacher, I think, for many years too. So, he sort of tapped into what he needed to do and went in that direction. But I think most authors probably have other jobs as well, or they're like me. It just takes them like years, years and years and years to put something out.
Mima, take us a moment to just kind of look across the entire span of your writing career. And is there any one, might be more, but is there any one obstacle or thing that got in your way that kind of frustrated you that you were able to overcome?
I think the biggest obstacle for me was being determined to like only work on projects that I personally felt really passionate about, whether anybody else liked them or not. I just can't really work on stuff I'm not passionately interested in doing myself. And so sometimes that work really kind of fell between genres, or it wasn't in the right lane for, someone like an agent, or like I had an agent for a while. And it's just like, you sort of found yourself to be like, oh, your book isn't this enough or that enough, or, it's not like different enough in this way or that way. So I feel like that was really challenging. It's like this character's the wrong age. Like this, like my first book, the character was like 14, almost 15. And at the time my agent was trying to sell it, publishers were like, we kind of need her to be either 12 or like 16. She has to be like, YA or middle grade. Pick which lane do you want to be in? And I'm like, well, but no, she just finished 8th grade. This is how old she is. She's 14. It's like, and somehow that was a big obstacle. That age group, I think, was very, because it was like, well, where are they going to put this book in a bookstore? Like, is it a middle grade book or is it a YA book? And my publisher was like, it's just going to be a YA book, even though it's young. And of course, now there's a movement for, it's called Young Teen Lit. There's like a school librarian and I think a middle school teacher who have really like, hey, we need stories about 13, 14, 15-year-olds. Like, where are those stories for this age group? They don't want to read about 12-year-olds. They don't want to read about 16, 17-year-olds. So suddenly it's like, oh, there's a market need for this age group. And so I've had, I think, more success with my first book, Cat's Creek Summer, because of that. And then with Marilyn too, I've had a lot of agents who were just like, even my agent was like, I don't know what to do with this. Is it horror? Is it fan? Like, what is it? And it's like, well,
it's a ghost story.
It's
like
really
this.
true. It's really true. Like when I went to the bookstore to look for comps of my book, it's like, well, for fantasy, YA fantasy is like pretty dark. There's like the covers are pretty dark, and there's a lot of visible mayhem on the covers. And they were just like, what do we do with this book? And I'm just like, I don't know. It's a fantasy paranormal, but it's also kind of, a teen comedy.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
It crosses over a couple, yeah.
Yeah, it's also adults are gonna like this book too, because especially if they're Marilyn fans. It's just like, I don't know. It's just a book. Like, I mean, I didn't have that problem when I was growing up. There was just juvenile fiction. It was just all in one category.
Right.
They didn't. It was picture books and juvenile fiction.
Yeah, exactly.
And they really didn't split up the books, So now it's a little more challenging. So I think that was challenging, and I just kind of refused to not work on what I. It's like I don't. If I want to write what I want to write. That's what I'm going to do. So.
What about advice for anyone that's looking to start on their first book?
I guess I would say probably, obviously I've, sort of too new into this to really want to give people like a whole lot of advice, but I think it's really like read a lot, read widely in many genres, not just your own genre, but also kind of know if you've picked a genre, then really know that audience, really try to get to know that audience and also understand how those books are sold. Because I think a lot of people don't really understand. Like, here's an example. For years, people would say, well, why don't you just self-publish? And it's like, well, as a children's author, I can't really do that because that's not how books get to the market for children's books. You need traditional distribution. You need trade reviews because children's books are not bought the way, let's say, like a perfect book to self-publish is like a straight romance. Romance readers are avid readers. They don't need a physical book. They're happy with an ebook, so you don't even have to make a physical book if you don't want to. And you can reach those readers through fan sites, and the readers are hungry for new authors and new material. Whereas for children's books, you have to have traditional distribution to get into bookstores where your market is going to find your books, to get into libraries, to get into schools. You have to have trade reviews. The people who are going to buy your book need to see the path of credibility so that they're going to, so that they'll give your book a chance. So, and that's very challenging I think, for children's books to be self-published because they can't have the same trajectory into the marketplace that they need to get to the audience that needs to see their work. So it's not like it's impossible. I mean, nothing's impossible, but like, that's why I didn't do it. It was like, why would I do that? My books won't be able to reach the readership. So why would I bother doing that? So I would say really know the genre that you're writing in, like really understand how it works. Not like to create, to influence your actual writing, but just like know what you're trying to do and understand how that market works. And read widely. I mean, I read all the time. I read everything. I was a reader long before I ever decided to write anything. That's why I decided to write, was because I just love books. I always have loved books since I was like pre-kindergarten. I was a reader. So, and find critique partners that can really help you take your work to the next level. I've got people that I read their work, they read my work, and it's like they're the only ones the qualified readers that can ask the questions that can help your work get to the next level. It's just really tough to do it on your own. And that's a critical thing, is to find those people. So I think those are kind of my main things that are important. Read widely and deeply.
Mm-hmm. That is really good advice, actually. Yeah, just get out there and read for a while.
Yeah, I mean, everything. I read poetry, I read children's books, I read cookbooks, every genre of adult book. I mean, it's all, I read, nonfiction, just like, I don't just read only in my particular field. I just read whatever appeals to me, I read.
What was the best critique that you ever got?
That happens basically with my group of critique. It's like they're all from, like, I took a master's program and they're all kind of people from that master's program that we all kind of learned how to ask the questions, read work critically, and then ask the questions that will help the writer actually find the next thing. So I'd have to say that learning how to do that was probably, and how to ask that of other people, was probably very helpful. When someone like tells you how to do something, that's not helpful, actually. It's like when someone asks you why you made a choice that you made, that's helpful because it just makes you think. So, I mean, with this project, I would say the best piece of advice I got for Marilyn was that first mentor, Tim Wynne-Jones, fantastic writer. He's from Canada, and he read it, and he was the one who just was like, hey, if you're going to write about Marilyn Monroe, she better be on every page. I mean, literally, that's the piece of advice that was with me all the time, because I really understood that I was going to have to try to go as deeply as I could into this story. It was not going to just be a puffy little piece. I had to really spend the time to think about it and think about her deeply to make the story.
I'm curious as to your thoughts on where is the publishing industry going? Like, what is kind of next for us in, say, the next few years?
Gosh, what a good question. I feel like publishing is a business, and it's an expensive one. I mean, there's paper involved, there's printing costs, all of these things are expensive. Shipping, art, it's all like expensive components. I mean, there are ebooks, and there's a lot of different audiobooks are fantastic too. I think that publishing is going to have to figure out how to, I wouldn't say like figure out how to be less concerned with publishing winning books, like to figure out, it takes like 2 years to make a book, right? Less concerned about that and more concerned with just putting out really good work. And I'm not sure how that's going to happen in terms of whether they can afford to do that. I mean, I think that all publishers are paring down their staffs as much as they can. And it's harder and harder for writers to, you have to do more and more on your own to make sure your work is good. You can't just like go to the editor and have them ask a lot of questions, because chances are that editor is working on 10 other projects and maybe doesn't really have the ability to ask the questions that you need to have asked. So, I mean, I am hopeful that people will continue to love books and like tangible books, but I think that that's really challenging because it is expensive. So, I mean, I don't know where the industry is going. I feel like there's a lot of movement to taking published work and putting it into streaming, making shows. There's so many books that are being used as the fodder for streaming shows, which is a huge industry. So, hopefully that will funnel some money to authors and to publishing companies thinking, oh, well, we can have this as an outlet. Like this is another, I'm almost going to call it a retail outlet. This is another retail outlet. Like this series is now going to be turned into a Netflix series. Mm-hmm. So that's more money. And then people will buy the book and, there'll be like this. And I hope that like in schools to find more ways to teach kids not only how to read, but how to love reading. Because I think that's something that is very difficult in school because so many books are used for school, books that were not intended to be textbooks. I mean, I just recently reread The Great Gatsby, like maybe a month ago. And I'm reading this book just going, what was a classroom full of like 15-year-old girls in my high school doing reading this book? I'm pretty sure, not like they shouldn't have been reading it, but it was like, I'm pretty sure F. Scott Fitzgerald did not have a classroom of 15-year-old girls in mind when he wrote that book.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't take it away from them, and then to have them pick it apart piece by piece, it's just like, that is not why this guy wrote this book, and that's not what he expected would happen. So, I feel like that's kind of an unfortunate use of a lot of books, the way they're taught, because I think a lot of kids just get an idea that books are school. Mm-hmm. Reading is school. And it's like, that's really a shame because reading is really fun.
Exactly.
And it's an amazing thing. So I think that would be very helpful if we could figure out more ways to, I try to do author visits and talk about not like that particular in specific, but like, I am not your teacher, I'm sharing a story with you. You can think about it any way you want. You can tell me you hate my book. Completely fine. It's your opinion. It's your private opinion. And you're entitled to it, right? So I think the publishing industry is that's like a chicken and egg thing. You got to grow readers so that they actually want to read books, so that they will actually want to support the book industry.
Exactly. All right. Well, folks, we're coming down to the very end here. Of course, the last question, Mima, the big one, is what's next for you?
So I'm going to spend a little time promoting this book and continue promoting my last book. My next book is, I almost want to call it a new adult book. The main character is based on a mythological character, and we don't really know how old she is, but it's kind of youngish. And it's not a retelling of a Greek myth. I would call it more of an extrapolation of two Greek myths, kind of like what happened next after this myth finishes here. What happened next? So that's kind of all I'm going to say about that. That's my next project.
I like it. I like it.
I'm going to work on a Greek mythological extrapolation is my next project.
Nice. I like that. We're just giving like a little bit here just to get things going. But in the meantime, folks, we've told you everything about this book. We talked about the business. Here's what you do. You go to mimatipper.com. Everything is there. Get your copy of Channeling Marilyn, and then get your copy of Cat's Greek Summer. We've talked about this one before. A great story. And Mima is certainly looking forward to the next time we get to talk about your next book.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Max and Curtis. It was really a pleasure to meet you sort of in person on Zoom.
Thanks for listening to this episode, and please subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. It ensures you never miss an episode and helps our ranking, allowing others to discover the podcast more easily.
If you really liked it, please share it with a friend and join our Citywide Blackout Facebook community, along with following us on Instagram at CitywideMax and at Citywide Interviews.
I'm your host, Max Bowen.
And I'm Curtis Hughes.
And we'll see you all next time.